Well, at the time, we were kind of unusual. We came after Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, so we weren't a singer and a comic. We were just doing sketches. And we played at the Hungry Eye in San Francisco and the Gate of Horn, kind of hip venues at the time, the coffee houses. We'd always go in and follow the Smothers Brothers or someone. And I think word got around that we were kind of a happening team. We were very unusual. We didn't talk to the audience. We just came out and did a series of sketches with blackouts and then good night. I know we had some ending piece. We had two ending pieces where I came out and very seriously said, I just want to talk to the audience. I have this very valuable letter. It's called the Lincoln Letter. My uncle had written, or my grandfather had written a letter to Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln had replied, and I had this letter, and I prepared the letter. And I said, it's very valuable, but for this audience, I want to read what Mr. Lincoln said from his heart. And I'd started to read, and my partner in the background, you could hear, my partner would come up. He was a little short guy. He had a cigar. They always looked at him. He came up, and he looked at me, grabbed the Lincoln Letter, spit into it, threw it on the floor, and walked off. Well, the audience would laugh for 4 or 5 minutes. I would just sit there and look at him as he walked off. And I would say, good night, everyone. And that was our closing piece.
Did you have to write new material every time you appeared?
Oh, yes. We do new stuff for the Ed Sullivan Show. I don't think we went over too well.
Why not?
Because I think the show was geared more for the bang, bang, the jokes, the bang, Jackie Mason. And we did kind of a material with, I don't know, we were about the same time or a little after Stiller and Mira, the same kind of thing. But Ed Sullivan was tough. He was, I remember one time we were on, Billy J. Kramer was a big pop star. He came after the Beatles. And Ed Sullivan would say, come out of commercial, and he'd say, are you ready for Billy J. Kramer? And the audience would scream, and first, Greco and Willard. And then we'd have to come out. The audience was confused. Billy, are we going to introduce? And then one time we had a sketch which I thought that was our gem of our show, where I was a big league baseball player who'd set a record for the most consecutive games that I had not played in. And they had me as a guest star on a charity show, and I had to come out to shake my partner's hand, and I missed his hand. And then they were going to draw the glove for the kids. And I had to put my hand in and draw out a lucky number. The kid was going to win a glove. And he took the number and he read the number out, and no one had the number. I said, that's my number. He says, well, that's an extra treat for the kids. It's this glove, and it was your number. I said, no, I'd like the glove. I really need a new glove. So we had this argument, and I forget how it went on. But it just brought huge screams from the audience. So Ed Sullivan had the Collier's Magazine All-American team on. And they preceded us. And he read off the list. For left end from Stanford, Ed Krasuski. For left tackle from Harvard, John O'Hara. And then he got back to the fullback, Bet Barnes from UCLA. And now Greco and Willard. So we came out and the audience was confused because they thought, are these two football players? So I think we did about half the sketch to silence, and then it kind of built up, and I was just crushed. And about 6 months later, I got hold of the tape. I said, we must have just been awful, and I watched it, and it was as funny as it could be. It just confused the audience. So I have great stories about Ed Sullivan. I remember there was some comic on, some poor guy in the rehearsal. He came out and just killed. He was so wonderful, and I heard them talk to him, and they said, Mr. Sullivan wants you to do an impression of him, and he wants you to do this, change the guy's whole act. And I remember that night he came out to silence, and he didn't score. And I remember seeing him standing in the wings, just standing with his head down, just like that. And I said, oh my God. But Ed Sullivan was the show to be on. My favorite story, it happened to Stiller and Mira. It didn't happen to us. But they were standing in the wings ready to go on. They were about to be introduced, and they did sketches. And the producer came up and said, we're running short. Cut 2 minutes from your sketch. which is a little tough to do. So then they changed something of ours, and they said Ed would like to talk to you. So we went over, and Ed, I mean, this was the king. This was like going up in front of the president. Even more so, now the president, you know, if it was Obama, hi, how are you, Brock? But that back then, this is, and we had an opening which we did in the club, where I would come out and introduce ourselves. I said, good evening, we're Greco and Willard. I'm Vic Greco. This is my partner, Fred Willard. And we are, and then he'd whisper in my ear. I said, what, is that right? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Fred Willard, and this is Vic Greco. So we did that, and the producers show Mr. Sullivan your introduction. So I did that. I'm Vic Greco. This is Fred Willard. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm Fred Willard. This is Vic Greco. And Ed Sullivan looks and says, oh, okay, that's okay. Go ahead. Thinking we just made a mistake. So it was tough. It was an uphill battle. And I don't remember if doing that show helped us that much. It was more the Steve Allen show, because that was our audience. We always just did great on Steve Allen. And that's where they'd get booked for these coffee houses around the country, and the Hungry Eye, and the more of the hip. Ed Sullivan appealed more to the big, like the Palmer House in Chicago, those big shows, you know, opening for Sarah Vaughan or something like that. So that was kind of the niche we wanted to be in, and we were in.